Hi guys. We're going to get started on our second round of flip notes, and these notes are on the characteristics of life. Last time we took notes, we used Cornell notes, and I would like to stick with that for this round, just so we can make some improvements. So I saw some good things and I saw a lot of confusion. I want to point out the good things, so maybe you can take that as an example and maybe move your notes in that direction. These notes put the topic or the main idea on the left-hand side. You can do a question, but the topic or main idea is totally fine. If you were an avid, they probably would have different requirements for our class. I'm okay with the topic or main idea. On the right side, we have our notes that are on the main topic or the main idea. I actually think this person has a lot, and you can definitely simplify it, but this is the basic structure of a Cornell note. Here's another set of notes, and here are the things I want to point out that I liked about this person's notes. This person used bullet points. They used highlighted words or phrases, things that they decided were important that would stand out to them if they looked at their notes again. And they got straight to the point. They didn't use sentences. They just used sentence fragments and abbreviations, which is totally fine for notes. And here's another set of notes. This person used two different types of bullet points. We have a dash for main ideas, and we have an arrow that signifies, the description or an example of that main set of notes. They use different colors to organize their notes, and they underlined important words or phrases. Just like the last person would highlight it, underlining is totally fine as well. So we're going to get our Cornell notes set up. On the left side of your paper, you need to draw a line. This should be about 1/3 of the page. You could also fold your notes if you prefer. And on the right side, you're going to leave a section for your notes, but at the top, you should title your notes. This topic is on characteristics of life, so you may want to turn that into a title, or you can turn it into a question if you want your question or a title to be a question. So take a second to pause these notes right here so you can get your notes set up before you start. Okay, so we're going to get into this, and we're going to go over the characteristics that all living things have, or all living things contain. So we know all living things are made of cells. We know that these cells are the smallest unit that we use to organize life. Yes, we have atoms and protons and electrons, but in order to organize or categorize life and the levels of life, in biology, we say that cells are the smallest unit that we're going to use to organize life. And we have many different types of cells, but two main points I want you guys to get is that there's a difference between unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms have only one cell. They're made of only one cell, like bacteria or amoebas, paramecium. They're very simple creatures. Multicellular organisms are made of two or more cells, and that's things like us or dogs or plants. In the picture, you'll notice at the top, those are nerve cells or brain cells. They run through your body. You have tons in your brain, obviously. Their job is to send messages. And at the bottom right, you have a bunch of red blood cells and a little white blood cell. And these cells have different jobs or functions from those brain cells or nerve cells above. White blood cells are going to help you fight infections and keep from getting sick, and those red blood cells that kind of look like little donuts, their job is to transport nutrients like oxygen and iron throughout your body. All living things grow and develop, and there's a difference between these two ideas. When something grows, it's taking on characteristics of their own species as they get older. So notice the picture of the horses at your right. The picture of the horses shows a young horse and then maybe a juvenile or a youthful horse, maybe like a teenager to you. And we also have an adult horse. And so we don't have, something that doesn't have legs and then eventually it grows legs. It did develop while the mom was pregnant with it, but during its life, it's just growing. So that picture shows growth. And then at the bottom with that frog life cycle, we're showing development, which is actually the changes, and we're thinking cellular or internal changes that might lead to outward changes. And these changes take place during growth. So you can see in that picture, a frog might start as an egg and then it develops into a tadpole, which then you can see the whole body structure change as it gets a little bit older. So that's development. All organisms grow and develop, they just do things differently and they're not exactly the same. So we definitely want to know the difference between growth and development, but everything does this. All living things reproduce, which means they are creating new offspring. And these organisms do things differently. Some organisms use sexual reproduction, which means that there's two organisms needed and that a sperm and egg must unite. So your top picture is representing that. This does not always mean they are right by each other. In fact, in the ocean or in a river, a fish might lay eggs, a female fish, and a male fish might go and they might release sperm into the water, and then however those eggs meet.
Attention teachers, the college and climate committees are meeting in the Career Center. College and climate committees are meeting in the Career Center.
And how those eggs meet is just by chance. So you might think all organisms do that, but they don't actually. Humans use sexual reproduction, but animals do as well, and it's slightly different for each organism. There's also a type of reproduction called asexual, and in this case, only one organism is needed. So at the bottom right, I've shown you a picture of bacteria, and these bacteria can clone themselves or reproduce themselves without another bacteria. They have enough of the reproductive organs, which are not like ours, to do this. Another example might be a flower, or even some lizards can do this. So at this point, I want you to take a look at your notes, and I want you to look, did you include a drawing with your notes? Did you include an example in your notes? Are you writing down more than what I'm saying? More than what is on the screen? Are you taking your connections to life and are you adding them to your notes? So pause your notes right here and take a second to look back and add anything you might need. All right, guys, so we're going to continue on. All living things contain genetic instructions, and you probably have heard something about this. So when we talk about this, we talk about DNA and RNA, and we talk about how those are genetic codes and how that code in our body is found inside of our cells, and it makes us who we are. It gives us instructions to perform daily functions like reproduction, or even information to tell our brain, hey, you need to send these kind of messages, or you need to send these hormones out in your body. Genetic instructions are really important because each cell gets its job from this genetic code. And if something doesn't have a genetic code, like DNA, then we might have a debate on this. And currently there's a debate on viruses because they do not have DNA and they only have RNA. All living things respond to their environment and they maintain homeostasis. So let's talk about those things separately. At the top right, you might see how something might respond to its environment. So you have a person grabbing a pan, and that person that's grabbing a pan is noticing that that pan is hot. And so they are responding to that situation. In this case, that's their environment, and they are doing something about it. So when we are responding to our environment, we're responding to a stimulus, and a stimulus is the thing that's going to cause the response. In that top picture, the stimulus is a hot pan, and our response, which is our attempt to balance out our environment or our internal environment, is to drop the pan because it is hot. So when we're trying to create balance, we're trying to maintain internal environments that are stable, and we call this homeostasis. Let's look at another example. At the bottom, you see a Venus flytrap, and it has its leaves wrapped around a bee. And this bee was walking along that Venus flytrap, and the Venus flytrap closed its leaves. It's trying to maintain a stable internal environment, and it needs energy to continue to live. So it's going to use that bee as energy. It's going to break down its body structures, and it's going to become food for that plant. And this is one of those carnivorous plants that's a special plant but it's also responding to its environment. So the stimulus in that case was the bee walking across, and the response was to close the leaves. And it's doing this in an attempt to maintain homeostasis or maintain balance in the internal environment. All living things use energy, and essentially the definition for energy is the ability to do work or to make things change. And our organisms get energy in different ways. And the reason we need our energy is so that organisms can do what they need to do, whether that's reproduce or run a mile or sit and do biology notes. You need energy to do every little thing, even to send a message to your hand, to write something down on a piece of paper. So if you look at the top picture, that's Mr. Obama, our president, and he is getting energy by eating a sandwich. We call him a heterotroph or a consumer. And at the bottom, you would see a plant, a sunflower, and plants use photosynthesis. All plants do that. Some plants have other special things like that Venus flytrap that can also help it get energy. But these plants are called autotrophs or producers. One of the last things we're going to talk about is how all things evolve. And I gave you an example here. Basically, when we talk about things evolving, we're looking at genetics. But what you just need to know is that we see changes in populations. We don't see changes in individuals over their lifetime. So you look at the picture of that gray wolf and how it has evolved into many different types of dogs. And that's not in that wolf's lifetime. It just means that genes got passed on, and as they got passed on, they mutated or changed, and that caused changes in species, including adding species of dogs. So it's a really cool example, and we'll get into that more. So you don't need to understand this just yet, but you need to know that it is a characteristic of all living things. So at this point, look back at your notes. Have you highlighted or underlined key terms or phrases? Are you using bullet points? Are you using different types of bullet points? Take a moment to pause and look back at your notes and check out, did you do anything? Did you need to add any of those things, highlighting or underlining bullet points right now? Okay, so let's quiz ourselves. After taking those notes, let's see what you know. Okay, so we have a quiz here, and what I'm asking you to do in this quiz is to look at the statement, and I want to know which characteristic from your notes is represented by the statement. I'm going to read these to you, and I would like you to pause your notes after I'm done and quiz yourself and see if you can figure out which characteristic is represented. So the first one is the caterpillar turned into a butterfly. Number 2, my mom had a baby. Number 3, if I don't eat breakfast, it's hard to stay awake in first period. Number 4, I am usually sweaty after PE. Number 5, when the sun is bright, I squint. Number 6, I used to be only 5 feet tall. So again, pause your notes and quiz yourself here. Yes, you should write this in your notes. It would be super helpful for you. Okay, so after you've quizzed yourself, I would like you guys to do the following. Please reread your notes. Add any notes that you think of off to the side in the margins. You may even want to do this in a different color. And then the last thing you should do is write your summary. So let's pause our notes here to check for these things. I hope you enjoyed these notes, and I hope they got a little bit better than last time. I'm learning just as well.